Hi everyone. All right, I know I didn't talk in the video yesterday, but I just kind of wanted to kind of process through it and get it done. I did have a couple of questions that were asked of me. The white is just spackle. It's just a wall uh, texturizing product or a product that you use to fill nail holes and things like that in walls. I use it all the time to get quick texture. You can use any type of molding paste or modeling paste um, and get the same basic effect. It works really well because it's a quick dry product, and that means that it dries very quickly. It's purple to the start with so that you can see where you're putting it, which is kind of awesome, and it eventually dries clear. Now you can see that some of the tissue papers that I use, for instance, the one that has this pink design, actually the ink of it bled up through into the spackle, which is, that's interesting to see that that happened. What I didn't get a chance to do on the last video was add in the white gesso. I've put a lot of layers of really kind of a jumbled mix of color. I'm mainly just doing it for background effect. I didn't intend for any of it to be specifically recognizable. I want it to just be there for color and, a little bit of kind of like a visual interest. So the first thing that I do want to do, and I have a little kitten who's crying in the background. I don't think you can probably hear him because I'm on the microphone headset, but he's crying like crazy because he can hear me talking. And I think he thinks I'm talking to him. But so I'm just going to take white gesso and I'm just going to basically start to apply the white to calm down, I guess you would say, the chaos, to, so maybe like I could say create, control a little bit of the chaos that is, the mishmash of colors and things in the background. So in order to do that, I'm not going to lose the butterflies. There's still a raised texture to them. So the next thing that I'll do after this will kind of bring them back out. But in this case, with the white gesso, I'm able to kind of mute some of those colors down. I don't necessarily intend to cover everything, but this will have kind of a calming effect, really. What's going on, I can get rid of anything that I'm not thrilled with, how it visually looks now. I can clean up any really dark areas, which is kind of where I started at. You can do just about anything when you have like this really busy background layer, and I guess that's the key to it. A lot of people would have seen kind of where I left it at and would have thought, wow, that's such a busy background. But you kind of have to go there a little bit, get it a little bit chaotic and busy to bring it back in the way that I'm doing. It can be a really good learning process to go through. It's because you can kind of see that transformation happen like you're seeing now, and then you can see yourself being able to get it back under control. And how do I explain it? The different color combinations, exactly where each color is placed, isn't something that I wanted to spend a lot of time working on. I wanted it to happen a little bit random. So that's why I did what I did. So there are people who are specifically not proponents of layering and mixed media, who, as soon as you do something like that, they immediately say, well, why did you bother to put that down there at all? That's why, because you want to kind of try to experiment with that whole random element that you are only going to achieve if you try something like this. So at this point, I do want a little bit more of this to be a more solid color. So I'm going to hit this with my heat gun. I'm just going to pause and I'll come right back when it's dry. Okay, it's reasonably dry. Something I wanted to mention, I could have put this down really, really thick and it would have been more opaque, but it would have taken a lot longer to dry. And because I'm trying to work on video in the way that I am, that's why I do multiple coats instead of just doing one really thick coat. So hopefully that makes sense. So you can see with the second application, having the first layer dry, the second application is going to be much more opaque. I could conceivably even do a third layer to really push it to a nice opaque level, but I'm actually going to color this color over top of this again anyway, so I'm not as concerned with it being completely opaque everywhere. I was more concerned with calming down the chaos a little bit, basically making room so that I can make more chaos, as well being able to incorporate the white of the butterflies a little bit more, but still, you know, having my cake and eat it too, doing all of that, but still getting all the lovely visual information that I'm, you know, getting from the different tissue papers that I put down. So there's a method for the madness. All right, so I'm pretty much satisfied. I'm going to, for the most part, let this be, although there is one thing that I want to do. Many of you who follow my channel know how much I love splatter, and I want to get just a little bit of that here. Again, I'm just kind of breaking it up, and at the same time, the spatter connects everything kind of together a little bit. I'll probably do more after, once this is dry. So I'm gonna, or once I'm done completely, but for now I'm going to go ahead and clean the entire desk off and get this dry with the heat gun, and then I'll be back. Okay, so now it's time for the fun and the magical things. Now, because the original girl that I drew and painted with watercolor was very kind of soft, pale colors, I kind of want to try to stay with that. Now, I'm going to be using these tumble dyes that I got from Bonnie, and I've tried to choose anyway, colors that I think will work with it, even though there's red and orange and green in the background colors. The girl had pink and blue, and then there's a little bit of purple, so that's what I decided to go with. Plus, you know, if I'm gonna choose a color scheme, I'm just gonna choose it, and I could go either way. So in this case, I'm gonna go this way so that I don't have to do a lot of work to bring her back into it. And because using the dyes, the sprays that I'm gonna use are gonna go down onto the background, they're probably going to mix and blend with the colors that are already there. So hopefully that explains everything. But sometimes it's just better to just show you. Now there's a couple of ways I can go about this. I can just spray the ink straight down and let them dry. I can use a paintbrush. I'm going to do kind of a combination of those things. So the first thing I'm going to do is just spray some of this purple in a few different spots. And I do have a layer, before I do this, I do have a layer of fluid matte medium over her face. So keep that in mind. I can wipe anything I need to pretty much back off of her face as long as I act reasonably quickly. So if you're doing, trying to do this or attempting to do this, you want to put a layer of something that's non-porous over top of your face. So like Collage Page, varnish, spray varnish, any kind of like clear layer that'll act as a protective barrier. You could even use a gel medium as long as it's going to dry clear, a gloss medium, or in this case I used the fluid matte medium. But I'm going to definitely be kind of random about the process, at least to start out with. Because I don't mind, and in fact I want to encourage these colors to kind of move around and mix together. So that means I don't have to be very careful with them. And right now they're really kind of sort of bright and vibrant, but that's, you know, I can always tone that down if I need to in the future with some more white paint of some kind. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit these with water now. By hitting them with water, you cause them to start kind of moving and flowing around without using a brush or anything, although there's nothing wrong with using a brush. I just often like to see what they'll do on their own. Now, something that you can also do is you can gently tilt the paper and get the color to move around. That's another good possibility or way to handle it, I should say. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get the paintbrush back out again, and I'm going to keep it pretty wet. And I'm just going to start kind of moving physically with the brush, kind of moving the colors around. I want the colors to be over top of all of the butterflies that I have created. And the reason for that is because they are a porous, when I was talking about non-porous for over her face. The spackle and the gesso are, well, the spackle is very porous. The gesso is slightly porous. And what that means is that the ink color or the dye color is going to soak right down into them as well. You're starting to see where it's like darker around the edges everywhere, where there's a difference in height. That's something else that I kind of want to encourage to have happen. So before it dries too much, I'm just going to move these colors around. I can pick up color from here and move it, you know, somewhere else if I need to. So there's really a lot you can do. Let's see. And then if you feel like you have too much moisture, and I have quite a lot of moisture on here, so once I get it to a point where I'm satisfied with, you know, kind of how and where I've moved the color around, then it's up to me and, you know, up to my discretion. So it's up to your discretion on your page if you're following along. How much and where you want to pull some of that moisture back. So I rinsed the brush, I gently dried it off, but it is still wet. And now I'm going to kind of come back in and clear away the color from over her face. If some of it seems to stick a little too well and it's not gently coming up with just the wet brush, I can always come back in with alcohol after this is fully dried, and I should have no problem pulling color off of her face that way without eating too far down into the protective layer. So for right now, I'm going to take this paper towel and I'm just going to look around for areas where I have puddles that I think are a little too thick and I think it's going to take a little too long, you know, to get it to dry. And I'm just going to start pulling color up off of the paper. Now, you can pull too much color off, but you can always just put more down if that makes sense. But if you leave it too wet, it can actually sort of like bubble up and reactivate the layers that are under it, especially in this case because I didn't let it get fully dry. So I don't want to have too much excess water. It's up to you though. It's kind of like one of those, you have to make your decision as you go, how much is too much. So I'm just looking for thick, heavy puddles of color. I kind of move my head around to see where the water is really glinting and there seems to be a heavy amount of it. So I'm also just kind of soaking it up from the top of her face. Okay, I think I'm just about done. I don't want to pull so much off that I kind of start to lose some of my color. And I do kind of feel like I need to break that up right there a little bit. So I'm just going to use water to do that. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and get this dry. Going to use a heat gun. I'm going to dry it all off, and then I will come back. All right, so there you have it. The page is now dry, and that is a pretty good example, I think, of this particular technique. The only thing that I would kind of throw out there, like a caveat, is the fact that I generally like to do this where I have enough time in between that I can just throw the puddles of color down and let them dry on their own. In other words, I don't have to heat gun them, and I don't have to soak so much of it up. So if I wasn't doing this on camera and I wasn't trying to present this in a video format, then I would not have rushed that part of the process. And because of that, I would have had even more kind of the color pooling up, which you sort of kind of can see a bit of that here. And you can see what I was talking about, where the color gets darker around the edges, where the difference is in texture, you know, the different dimensional layers. So for the most part, I'm very satisfied with it. I could conceivably lighten this a lot more, but I kind of am happy with it as it, you know, has turned out, so I don't feel like I need to. And the reason I think for this particular page why I don't want to lighten it more is, even though she is slightly lighter in colors, these colors are pretty dark and rich, so I kind of wanted to go for something that would give me a nice in between, where I could bring them together, the two things, you know, that in their more chaotic state seemed wildly different from each other. Here now, you know, you start to get that kind of feeling of, I don't know, like a romantic garden, or a spring or summertime garden sort of feel, I guess you would say. So the last step that I'm going to do is I'm going to do my journaling. I'm more than likely just going to do a small amount of journaling this particular page, because I didn't really reserve any areas for journaling. I would probably just do some of my more, you know, random smaller type of journaling on a page like this. But definitely, if you love to actually journal in your art journals, then that's something to keep in mind. You kind of, you know, leave a particular area where you don't have a lot of texture. So like up here, let's see, so many things I could talk about right now, as far as like I could write in my journal. Let me think for a moment. Okay, so even though I didn't leave a lot of space, I was able to incorporate journaling here, here, and then even a little bit down here to finish my thought. So that's kind of what I was saying about how you can move it around everywhere. Now, I was able to pretty much keep her face clear of too much ink or additional color. So because of that, I didn't need to, you know, clear it off, but I could have used, if I needed to, I could have used some rubbing alcohol and wiped a little bit more of it off. There's a lot of like blue dotting and stuff, which I'm not sure if you can even really see on the camera. But overall, this is a really fun technique. I like to do this a lot. I've taught this in a couple of different classes. So thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys with the next video. And I do have a lot of questions that I haven't had a chance to get to and to comment on or respond back yet. Hopefully I'll be able to do some of that this evening, or at least over the holiday weekend. For those of you who are in the US, happy Thanksgiving. And I think I'm going to I should have a video for Friday, but then I think I've already said this, but I'm gonna skip weekends for a while. I just feel like 7 videos a week is a little bit much, so I'm just gonna do kind of like Monday through Friday. But this video should, I think, be posted on Thanksgiving, so there will be a video on that Friday as well. All right, thanks so much, guys.